As most middle school students can tell you, in the U.S. there's a separation of church and state. But in Massachusetts, historic churches struggling to care for their sanctuaries and grounds often seek public funding. Advocates say it's about preserving history, not supporting religion. But some taxpayers in the town of Acton disagree. And as WGBH's Stephanie Lydon reports, they've taken their case against using public funds to restore a local church all the way to Massachusetts' highest court.
Like many New England towns, Acton has a monument to its earliest heroes, local men who fought in the Revolutionary War. Town Hall has been repainted with its original colors. It was in this building town meeting members overwhelmingly agreed to spend more than $100,000 of Community Preservation Act, or CPA, money for the restoration of another historic building, the Congregational Church.
The church building represents the entire history of Acton. It's intertwined with the growth of the town from its first days.
Selectman Peter Barry points out that when Acton got its charter, it also got the church, where the congregation worshipped and resolved civic matters.
That's really where the New England town meeting came from, was people gathering in churches to discuss government affairs.
But in a democratic tradition as old as Acton, a minority of residents objected to the majority's decision because the CPA is funded with taxpayer money.
It shouldn't be the responsibility of the taxpayers to support church buildings. It's unconstitutional.
Ron Madnick is with Americans United for Separation of Church and State, a national advocacy group that has taken a lawsuit filed on behalf of 13 Acton taxpayers all the way to the state Supreme Judicial Court.
When people came here in the beginning, they were trying to escape from governments and churches which forced them to pay taxes to churches they didn't belong to, or even belong to a church they did not want to belong to.
The impact of the Supreme Judicial Court's decision will reach beyond Acton. A search of the Community Preservation Coalition's data shows that over the last decade or so, CPA money has been used to restore hundreds of Massachusetts churches. Repairs to the Swedenborg Chapel in Harvard Square were funded with a $50,000 CPA grant, a significant sum at a time this church, like many others, faces a decline in numbers.
How big is your congregation? We have 15 members.
Reverend Sage Cole says her chapel merits public support because it's a local landmark and a space for public meetings and concerts. She hopes churches will continue to be eligible for CPA money.
We're a part of the community too, so I certainly would be a strange thing, I think, to limit a whole portion of the population from receiving that kind of support. And churches in particular kind of have a historical significance.
Stephanie Lydon joins me now. Hey, Stephanie.
Hi,
so when a church, forget that decision for a second, when a church gets CPA money, now, and you say hundreds of them do, are there strings attached, or they can do whatever they want to do with it?
They have to comply with historic standards, and a lot of towns put in a requirement that even if the building is sold, the changes go with the deed so that nothing that CPA money paid for can be changed, so that historic look is preserved.
You know, for those not familiar with the community preservation, I don't want them left with the impression, I don't think you intended to leave this, that this is what all those funds do. It's used for a whole spectrum of things depending on the community, depending on what the need is.
That's right. It can be used to create affordable housing, to preserve open space, to create recreational facilities. So this lawsuit is really narrowly targeted at this issue of can CPA money be used to restore a religious institution?
Yeah, I'm not questioning at all the good faith of the people who object to the use of these funds, but do they at least acknowledge there's a problem that needs solution? These are old churches that are historic buildings that do have problems that need fixing. So if there is a constitutional problem, if they're successful, do they go so far as to say, we have an idea for a solution?
Ron Madnick, who is with Americans United for Separation of Church and State, appreciates that. Yes,
he does.
These churches do carry history.
So what does he do about it?
He told me a story about his own synagogue in Worcester, which he said the congregation diminished, and eventually that synagogue was sold to the city. The city has kept it up. It's no longer a synagogue. It has another use. And that's
because they couldn't afford it.
The congregation could no longer afford the building. And so his point is, if you want these historic old buildings, if the communities really feel they're that important and the congregation cannot support them, sell them. Let the communities preserve them in whatever manner they would like.
But if they sell the communities, then the community can't allow them to be obviously.
They can no longer be a religious institution.
Well, is there any expectation when the SJC decision comes down this?
They have up to 130 days, so probably this winter.
Great, Stephanie. Thanks so much.
You're
it's
welcome.
Good to see you.